Yo, guys, what is good, everybody? There we go. A little bit of light. Let there be a little bit of light. So, what's going on, guys? A little bit of a darker kind of theme here at night, and gonna talk about the playoffs actually tonight, and just record a little 25-minute podcast on what I saw tonight from the postseason from the playoffs. So overall, we had three games. It was kind of an exhausting weekend if we're going out there and being honest about how we watch these games. The first game was the Bills game, and they got off to a really slow start in the first half. The Bills were really tight because the Bills have never won a championship, or the Bills have never even won a playoff game in like 20 years, 25 years, whatever it was. So they were really nervous going into the contest tonight or yesterday. And it showed a little bit. But that fourth down stop and then Josh Allen, the Bills just have an ability to turn it on with explosive plays on offense. Stephon Diggs got the big catch late in the fourth quarter. Now, the Bills' defense, I mean, this is going to be the worst possible matchup, and we're going to talk about the matchup going forward for the Buffalo Bills. But again, for them to get this playoff win, for them to get to the divisional round, it's a heck of an accomplishment for Josh Allen. This offense, Josh Allen goes for 340 again. And this team, I mean, this defense has some good linebacker play. And if the Bills can really score, and this is going to be an unbelievable contest because whoever gets out of the AFC is most likely gonna roll in the Super Bowl in Tampa. So that's how I see this thing going. And it was a really good game for Buffalo. I expected them to win. The fumble call at the end should have gone to the Bills. The defense was okay in spots. They made timely plays, but they're going to get better and better again. This was a team that was really tight in terms of nerves and just trying to get the first one out of the way. Whatever you're doing in life, the first one is always going to be the toughest. Then we talk about the Rams beating Seattle. And this is the classic case where in this game, Russell Wilson's just being asked to throw the football too much. That's what it's coming down to, is that Russell Wilson is not this type of guy that's comfortable throwing the ball like 40 times a game. And he's a very good complementary quarterback. He can make plays at the end of the game in the 2-minute warning, but it's almost like you're eating like a Hershey bar. One Hershey bar is great, but you do everything in moderation, and life comes down to moderation a lot. And for Russell Wilson, they've lost this sense of a running game in Seattle. Pete Carroll doesn't like playing this style of football without this running game. They end up trading all their assets away for Jamal Adams. You look at Pete Carroll, who's almost 69 years old, and I mean, Pete Carroll is going to eventually retire from coaching football. And this Seattle team has just been a mess ever since the Legion of Boom. And Russell Wilson, ever since that interception against Malcolm Butler, he has never been to an NFC championship. He was able to win a couple of games. I mean, they lost to the Cowboys, the Seattle Seahawks. I'm trying to think of who they defeated before they lost to the Packers last year, I believe. Opening round. Why can't I think of who the Seattle Seahawks played in the opening round? Might have been Minnesota played the Saints. Oh, it's the Eagles and Josh McCown. They actually won that game. They came very close to beating San Francisco in order to win the division, but still their defense isn't that good. And then this year they really got exposed. So for Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson throwing the ball, they need to get back to running it a little bit, having a balanced offense, because there's only a couple of quarterbacks in the NFL that can really survive with throwing the ball 45 to 50 times, and that's actually Josh Allen. And maybe it's the height of Russell Wilson being 6 feet tall. It's a chore, especially against a pass rush. I'm not sure if Justin Herbert is going to be a guy that's going to play in that kind of scheme. Maybe he can, because he can roll out and he's a bigger quarterback. Deshaun Watson, I think it would be advantageous for him to have a running game. Lamar Jackson has a running game. You look at Russell Wilson, he can kind of be like Lamar Jackson, where he needs a good running game. But there's some quarterbacks that are just unbelievable at, and Russell's a very good improviser. But Russell's getting a bit older. He's a little bit on the smaller side, and he's just a great play action passer. And kind of like Tua a little bit, it's good to get Russell just with those defined reads, and it's good to sometimes run it on first down, get that clock moving. The analytics tell you to always throw the football, but again, I mean, when you're always throwing deep, it takes away the surprise, the shock and awe of throwing the football deep. And in this offense, they need to run the ball. And against the Rams, Sean McVay is excellent. You know why he's excellent? Because he hired Brandon Staley. I mean, Sean McVay's a wizard because he figured out that this guy Staley was the next guru. And he took in Brandon Staley, who was a guy on Vic Fangio's staff. There's no one who knows the NFL like Sean McVay does. He went with Wade Phillips, and then he got rid of Wade Phillips, hires this new defensive stud, goes out there, gets Jalen Ramsey, puts him with Aaron Donald, and this defense is rolling. The offense was perfectly scripted. The running game, I mean, you're in a day and age where teams can't even get a yard running the ball, and they're smashing it with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. And I mean, it's great that Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan still run the football in this day and age. It's really nice to see. So really congrats to the Rams. I mean, Jared Goff's thumb's all messed up. He's not even that good of a quarterback to begin with. But this was an absolutely awesome win against Russell Wilson, and really the end of the era. And you start to look at this NFC West that you thought was unbelievable. You have the 49ers now with quarterback questions. Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury, looking at those two guys, I mean, I don't see them ever competing for championships and winning championships. And then you start to look at the Rams, and if they get their quarterback situation figured out, they're going to be amongst the elite of the elite teams here with Sean McVay. I think the Niners too. I think the Niners and the Rams are still the class of the division, because you look at Pete Carroll and Wilson. Wilson's the best quarterback in this division, but you look at Pete Carroll's getting very old, and I don't think that Kingsbury is really going to adapt, and he didn't adapt in college. He doesn't have the connections to get the defensive coordinator, and he doesn't see talent on the defensive side of the ball, and he never was able to really elevate Texas Tech at Lubbock, and you saw his limitations in the end. So he was a decent hire. He hasn't been a disaster in the NFL yet. He had some good moments this year for the Arizona Cardinals. But again, I think that people are going to be all over Arizona next year. I don't think their culture is that spectacular in Arizona. I think they have a couple of really good players, but throughout the building, the whole piece is together. It's not like an elite culture and an elite team. So then that brings us to the night game, where Taylor Heineke was a great story for Washington. He came in there and he really pushed Tom Brady and the Bucs a little bit. Now, the games this week without fans, I mean, it didn't have the same electricity, and it certainly was a lot of football watching, but Taylor Heineke was able to kind of keep Washington in the game, and the third quarter was very exciting. It was a gutsy effort. The Bucs themselves didn't look that great. I mean, offensively, Tom Brady in this game, third quarter, he was flat out very bad. The running game of Fournette was all right. And then Todd Bowles' defense just got beat, by Cam Sims and by bigger wide receivers. So Drew Brees might be able to take some more notes from this game as we head into the next game. But for the Bucs, again, they had all the pressure on them. If they lose this game, they're considered real. If the Bucs would have lost this game, then the Bucs would have really been considered. It would have been embarrassing for Tom Brady to lose to Taylor Heineke and this put together Washington team. I don't know how much the experience is going to help. It's going to help Washington because it's going to be a new quarterback. The defense has good pieces, so I guess it's good for the defense to get experience. Rivera's on the older side, but he's doing a really good job, and it was awesome to see him beat cancer, and I'm really happy for Ron. He's one of the good guys in the business. So, and then Taylor Heineke, a great story about he was a math student at Old Dominion. He played like one game for the Carolina Panthers a couple of years ago. He was at an FCS school or like a low D1 Old Dominion school. So it was a great story for him, and now he's going to get an opportunity to make, a bunch of money as a backup quarterback. I really think that there are going to be teams that are going to be interested in bringing him in as a backup because he showed that he can play and take care of the ball and knows where to throw the football. Going back to my earlier point actually on Seattle, not having fans in the stands, I mean, Pete Carroll's all about the momentum. He's chewing the gum. The 12th man, in Seattle, that place absolutely jumping there at whatever they call it, Invesco Field and Seattle, the raising of the 12th man flag. And I mean, Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll are all about that energy. And the Seahawks really thrive off of their home crowd. And the defense of Seattle is airtight, when everybody's going crazy. And if Jared Goff had to go into that kind of environment, I believe Seattle would have won that game. And you're seeing these really weird results with these quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, like Ben Roethlisberger, because you're not seeing any crowd there. Even Josh Allen would have been even more erratic had there been a lot of fans there, because fans give you a little bit of adrenaline, and when there are no fans there, you're able to focus better. That's why the offenses are so good this year. That's why you're seeing a lot of high point totals, because the offenses, they don't have to worry about the snap count issues. When they're on the road, it's easy to get all their signals across. And also, Aaron Rodgers and these great quarterbacks are able to hear what the defense is doing before the snap. So they're not rushed. It's not a hectic operation. And next year, I bet that these fans that come in and that people are loud, knock on wood, we have fans next year at these football games. I believe the offenses are really going to struggle. And you're really going to see like the rise of defense, or defense is kind of getting back into the mix next year around the NFL. Like if you look at the Steelers tonight, and if they had their crowd rocking Heinz Field, Renegade, it would have really been a different show. I don't think Baker Mayfield would have played, the same level. I don't think that the defense would have gotten sliced up as bad, because when you're playing with emotion and you have the crowd like Beaver Stadium at Penn State, and there's still unbelievable environments for sports and for football that really can change a game and affect how a game goes. And that's what's special about having fans. Fans can change the tide of a game. And when you go to New Orleans and the Dome gets rocking, Drew Brees, the energy, the electricity, it's fantastic. So today's game, by the way, let's talk about Matt Nagy. I mean, this guy is absolutely shot. He has nothing left in his arsenal in terms of play calling. He's terrible. Mitchell Trubisky, who played decent for a couple of weeks, he cannot throw a ball past 5 yards. It was an embarrassing performance today by the Chicago Bears. The worst football game I've watched all season long. No fans. It was a horrible viewing experience on CBS, on Nickelodeon. The game was disgusting. I'm so sad that I couldn't fall asleep longer. I regret waking up to watch that piece of crap in the second half, and that game caused me to even miss the beginning of the Cleveland Browns game because I wanted to just go and take a long shower and just try to cleanse my palate from what was just a horrendous viewing experience with the Chicago Bears and Matt Nagy. And what gives you hope if you're a Chicago Bears fan that your offense is so inept? And I feel horrible. If I was a Chicago Bears fan, if I was a kid who was 8 years old and had to watch Chicago Bears football, I'd probably be scarred from the game. I wouldn't watch football for another 5 years because I'd be like, is this what you guys like watching? Is this piece of crap product? It's a horrible product. That's what it is. Terrible offense. The defense is pretty much the defense is okay, but the offense itself, and the defense doesn't even make that big of explosive plays. It's bend not break. It's Pagano. It's so boring. And Matt Nagy and Bill Lazor, they're so boring, and they didn't let Trubisky loose, and Trubisky didn't also force the issue himself. He didn't throw past the markers either. He didn't advocate in the game plan to throw the ball deep. He really didn't communicate with these coaches, or there was just no juice in that game. And that was a horrible, horrible watch. And the Bears made no effort in the second half to try to come back. And they were complacent to just go into the half 7-3 and run out the first half clock. And when you do that, you're just sending a message to your team that you're just happy to be close, and it's the complete opposite of these attack-minded teams. You look at Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, they'll attack you. You look at Kansas City and even the Baltimore Ravens, they're always thinking the score, and that brings me to my next point about the attack style. Lamar Jackson played very, very well today. Had a big third down and 15. He rolled out to his right. This was early in the second quarter, rolled to his right, has a great ability and feel for where the sideline is, threw it to Mark Andrews, who's been a huge weapon for them. I also believe he threw one to Hollywood Brown down the sidelines. Lamar Jackson also ran one in from 46 yards out. And Lamar Jackson, the fastest quarterback in the NFL. And at 6'4", the guy he looks like he's going to be a force in this league for a while. And I was dead wrong on Lamar Jackson throughout the pre-draft process. But this guy and this Ravens team, they might be the first team in a while that comes from the wild card and that's able to really get hot and go on a run here. And now the Ravens are going to be playing the Buffalo Bills. So maybe also part of the NFL extending these playoffs is to try also to get teams like Buffalo and teams like the New Orleans Saints, maybe to try to have more upsets for some of these wild card teams in the tournament. But put it this way, this Ravens-Bills game is going to be, I mean, this AFC is pretty much who's going to win the Super Bowl these next few games, and I really believe that this Ravens-Bills game is going to be incredibly intense. Kansas City's now in a very good spot because Kansas City's going to play a banged-up Cleveland defense. So, although Baker Mayfield in the offense is really good, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to put up a ton of points, and the game's going to be at Arrowhead. So again, the Chiefs hold all the cards because of their unbelievable 14-2 season. Also looking at the final game, I mean, that was absurd with Big Ben Roethlisberger making all those mistakes, getting down 28-0 before you can blink. For the Browns to come in there with all that confidence, they're playing with house money. The Steelers, even with Mason Rudolph, they only lost by 2 the following week. And, I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, said that the Cleveland Browns are the Cleveland Browns. And that happened to backfire for Smith-Schuster in those comments. And, Ben Roethlisberger, Put it this way, you cut Big Ben Roethlisberger, you're going to save like $20 million dollars in cap money if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, Big Ben, he just looks old. He can't really move around. His arm is not as elite as it once was, and he's 40 years old, a lot of wear and tear. And the guy was making a lot of mistakes throwing the football tonight. So, 4 turnovers, a lot of picked passes. The running game is just not very good, and this defense needs a little bit of a reboot, specifically with linebackers and defensive line. Also, the strength and conditioning. I mean, this team towards the end of the year, I think it's because it was a COVID year. This team just kind of lost gas. It just ran out of gas at the end of the year, and also with Heinz Field completely empty. And the Steelers and really the Seattle Seahawks. These are two teams that are built off of emotion, that have great home crowds and support. And this year's just taken such a toll on this team that they were just ready to bow out of this tournament. And they've been in this tournament. They've been in the NFL season for so long that these guys, these defensive players, I mean, they haven't really been able to see their extended families, having to be quarantined with their team. And even just, trying to protect from the virus, combined with trying to play football, not really having any off weeks and not really having any time to your own, it just takes a toll on these players and these guys. And then when they have a home game, there's no fans there. It feels like a scrimmage, but yet it's a playoff atmosphere. And when the defense is at such a disadvantage because crowd noise, again, it throws off the offensive timing. It gives you more adrenaline. It really does. You're able to feed off of momentum in the crowd. And I know that people just want to block out the crowd, and I haven't been down there, but as a player or a coach, but I'm just telling you that no crowd noise has caused the offenses to just be unfairly good, because these offenses are going out like it's just practice. And again, like they're throwing 7-on-7, in the summer. So the playoffs itself, the product this week from the NFL, it's 3-3. It's kind of exhausting. But I'm glad to get now to Wild Card Weekend. The AFC is absolutely electric. You also get you have great matchup. Breeze versus Brady, Sean McVay versus Matt LaFleur, the Rams and the Packers. And then in the AFC, you really have the 2018 quarterback class. You're going to have Josh Allen playing against Lamar Jackson, two guys that have ascended. You might have MVP versus MVP here, in a matchup of young quarterbacks that, looking at the NFL landscape, the Ravens look like a pretty dang good team for the next couple of years. I'm impressed with how the Ravens have bounced back. They've got into the tournament. They were able to beat Tennessee today. Ryan Tannehill just struggling again. Tennessee's in purgatory. They weren't as bad as I thought they would be. You look at that, and you look at Mike Vrabel's decisions. You look now the AFC South, Tannehill another year older. I mean, Houston's an absolute mess. We'll see what Houston does with its coach, with Deshaun Watson. The Jags still need time to build this thing up. And then you look at the Colts, and we'll see where the Colts go at quarterback. Maybe Jacob Eason could be the truth. Who knows if there's a trade in the works for the Colts coming up here. Carson Wentz is talked about a lot of times. But Tennessee, the Titans themselves, they have Derrick Henry. The Ravens D was just beat down Derrick Henry today. Forced Ryan Tannehill to beat them. Corey Davis was a non-factor in the game. And Tennessee's defense wasn't good enough to win, and neither was the passing game. And that's what it came down to, only scoring 13 points, not really controlling the game. And the Ravens, other than a slow start, were able to really get their footing and take over. And then they have Justin Tucker. They have great special teams. So put it this way, the Bills got an absolutely horrible draw. The Bills, they really needed the Steelers to somehow pull out a win today so that they would have had the Steelers and they would have let Kansas City and Baltimore go at each other. But now the Bills, I mean, they're going to have to play the Ravens and the Chiefs for the right to get to the Super Bowl to play, another really good team in the NFC in Tampa, Florida. So this is Murderer's Row for the Buffalo Bills, and they've just come off of a very emotional home win themselves. So the Ravens have the experience factor, and I'm curious to even look at the lines. I'll give you the early lines for next week. I'm going to guess right now the lines. I'm going to say that Green Bay is going to start out as a 4.5-point favorite over the LA Rams. Might be 5.5. It's going to be one of those numbers. I'm going to say that the Ravens are going to be a 1.5-point favorite over Buffalo. The line's going to open up. The Ravens are going to be favored in the game. And then I'm going to take Kansas City. Kansas City, I'm going to give them 7.5. The line's going to be 6.5, or it's going to be 7.5. It might get up to like 8 before game time. And then the final game, I'm going to say 3.5 for New Orleans, and that line will go down. There will be money and movement from the public on Tampa, and Tampa will get down to like 2.5 by game time. So I'm going to give you my predictions in this other video, but just looking here, I'm curious about the lines. Green Bay is a 7-point line. It opens as a 7. Pretty crazy. The Bills are -3, and that line's already been taken down to 2.5. I mean, I expect, by the way, I really expect the Ravens by game time to almost be favored. Kansas City's a big 10-point favorite, so again, I was a little bit smaller on that spread. And then New Orleans, I nailed at 3.5. But again, Green Bay's favored bigger. I really like the Rams in this game. I do. I love the defense. Everybody's worried about the quarterback, but the running game of the Rams, Sean McVay, this team is rocking right now. I'd love the upset, and I think it could happen. Jared Goff's good enough to win. He wins playoff games, put it that way. He's not a glitzy, glamour, really good quarterback in this league. He does hold them back a little bit. But I think Jared Goff, I really like this Rams team. People are worried about the injuries, of course, to Aaron Donald, the best defensive player in the league. You also have Jalen Ramsey, so you maybe have 2 of the 3 best defensive players in the NFL. You maybe have 2 of the best defensive players in all of the NFL on your roster. I can't even really name some of the other tremendous defensive players. I mean, you have Cameron Jordan, J.J. Watt's a really good defensive player, T.J. Watt, excuse me. You look at the Ravens, and Marcus Peters is a good defensive player, and the guy from Alabama who's a cornerback as well, Marlon Humphrey, is a really good defensive player. So this is going to be, I mean, the Rams game's going to be unbelievable. And then, of course, we got Ravens and Bills. And, I mean, again, this is going to be very tough for the Buffalo Bills. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the Ravens are the hot team in the NFL. Everybody knows it. They're going to be the trendy pick for sure. And then you also got, coming up later, I'll tell you who you got. You got later on, you have early in the afternoon slate. You're going to get Cleveland and Kansas City, and everybody's going to take Kansas City. And then you got the Bucs and the Saints, and there's going to be some people that are going to be taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that game. So the Bills game will probably be the most interesting game. Rams-Packers to start off the Saturday slate. This is going to be an unbelievable wild card weekend. Great offenses everywhere. You get some fans for some of these games that'll come in. And this weekend will certainly be one to prepare for. Try to find a really good spot to watch these football games. Try to find a great spot to enjoy them with friends and family, whoever you could see, or even if you're watching alone, I think you're really going to enjoy these games. I'd rate this wild card weekend a 6 out of 10. There's no atmosphere. The Rams was a fun upset, but once again, the game wasn't that crazy. It was boring throughout, even the first half. The Bills-Colts was a nice, compelling watch. I'd give that game like an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. And then the night game with Heineke, again, he never was really a threat, but it was a nice story. I'm giving the Bills-Colts like an 8.5. I'm going to give the Taylor Heineke game Gonna give it a 7 out of 10 just because of the story of Heineke and Taylor Heineke and Tom Brady. And then the Rams is a 6.5. But I like seeing the Rams win. The early game today was decent. It was a 7 out of 10, very competitive. But again, it lacks some of the juice that rivalry is kind of established. Tannehill, Derrick Henry didn't really play that well. The game itself was an all right played game. Ravens played pretty good, but it wasn't incredibly dramatic down the stretch. Then the Bears game, of course, was a horrendous football game. And then tonight, with the lead changes and everything, Cleveland getting its first win, I'll put that game right up there at the top of the list, like an 8.5 in terms of how much fun it was to watch. And just a lot of scoring. Steelers coming back in the second half. I'm giving it an 8.5 too. So the Bills and the Browns games were the best games. Then I will put the Ravens, Taylor Heineke, and Washington against Tampa Bay. And then definitely second to worst is the Seahawks-Rams game. But the worst one was just an awful game, the Chicago Bears. And that's what you're going to see. I mean, out of these wild card games, you're going to get 2 out of 6 that are absolute clunkers in there. So now we have the national championship. It is a great 3 days of football. And tomorrow night's going to be absolutely, I just cannot wait for tomorrow night. So I'll go ahead, I'll post this video right now, reacting to the weekend that was in the NFL. 3 playoff games. The first game, the channel of the first game was CBS, I believe. Yep, CBS. I don't know if Nance and Romo did the game. They did today's game. The second game today was on Fox. It was Aikman and Buck. And then the third game that we saw was NBC, I believe, at night. And then NBC was tonight. ESPN got the 1 o'clock window game. So an ABC got that one. And then CBS was the Saints game, the Saints versus the Bears. And then tonight was the Browns game, which is NBC, Peacock, and other streaming apps. So this was a really, really fun time, fun game. Usually Fox always has the NFC, but now everything's getting jumbled up, and it's crazy. I mean, even Nickelodeon has these games, and I guess that made it kind of entertaining for a lot of folks. So 32 minutes of a stream. I hope you guys, enjoyed listening to my thoughts on these games, and congrats to all the Buffalo Cleveland fans out there. Been waiting a long time for it. And take care, guys, and I can't wait to throw up some more videos and talk tomorrow after the national championship and preview the games.